There's been a lot of conversation about reserves and surplus, and I made some comments a while back that I wasn't aware we had cash around in the numbers that we saw. And I've spent quite a bit of time with Pat, our finance manager. We've had some discussion about accounting and terminology and the AUD. And I put this report together for you. I think one thing that's really important is we use similar language, so we're identifying information correctly. Cash flow and cash surplus. And we spent a little time talking about what a cash surplus is, what cash flow is, and I know we have as well and individually, and maybe this will be helpful. I would also preface with this is a bit of a works in process, but I wanted to share what we have. You'll see on the second page, Pat broke the 2011. Remember, this is December 31, 2011. He broke the cash that was noted in the report down into the various accounts and how much was in each of those accounts. And we do get a total of over $6 million, which is a nice number. But let me go back to my notes. The attached report identifies the source of cash in specific accounts noted by our AUD at the end of 2011. This report identifies the reconciled cash balances that were on hand in each fund at the end of the year. Cash is needed to pay for day-to-day operations such as payroll, claims, health insurance, retirement, debt service, etc. A well-managed town will have sufficient cash on hand to fund day-to-day operations and to responsibly manage unforeseen expenses such as equipment failure, system breaks, weather-related damages, etc. The board and management are responsible for determining a reasonable amount of cash to maintain in each fund based on anticipated cash receipts and cash disbursements. The board is also responsible for determining if reserves should be established to finance future expenses, such as capital improvement or equipment purchases. Now, I'm going to deviate just for a second and again say, take your time to, because I'm still working with this myself, to sort out three categories. One being this cash flow that I'll continue to talk about as what we have in the accounts and the checkbooks to meet our needs in excess of what we budgeted to spend, but in anticipation of things that happen as they do. Next, for the purposes of this document anyway, would be a cash surplus, which would be money that is our savings, that we are keeping for, and this is the 10% amount that comptroller says is healthy for the things that happen. We've seen everything from bridges go down that there's no money for, but we don't anticipate. That would be a cash surplus. Or you might want to create a cash reserve that we targeted for a reoccurring fund that we know that day's coming. And as I went through this, I thought of Tom, who, as long as I've been here, has always argued and lobbied that we anticipate the need for the purchase of heavy equipment, like snowplows. We know every 2 years we're going to have to get one of these things, and it's going to cost us a couple $100,000 to $250,000. Why aren't we prepared? Because when we aren't, you borrow money, you pay to borrow money. And I totally agree with him. That would be, in my language anyway, a cash reserve that is encumbered for that purpose, it's targeted for that purpose, and there are no options, as opposed to a cash surplus that would be funds that are savings, but they're going to be available if we have a need, with board approval, of course. Back to my little script here. It should be noted that there are laws that restrict the transfer of cash from one fund to another. I think you're all aware of that. For example, the general fund can transfer funds to the highway fund in order to fund day-to-day operations. However, the highway fund cannot transfer funds to the general. Additionally, the water and sewer funds cannot transfer cash to the general or highway funds. As noted, the cash balances are not always transferable, and in some cases, such as capital projects, are restricted to expenditures related to the specific capital project. Concern as I looked at these, our general and highway accounts, I believe, are dangerously low and do not have sufficient cash available to finance day-to-day operations. We pretty well run on a day-to-day basis, and if something large happens, we deal with it. And this is why when we need a snowplow, we find ourselves, having to come up with a debt-related plan in order to do that. We don't build that into the system, and we should. The lack of cash could result in the town's inability to pay bills on time, incur finance charges, or the necessity to incur debt in order to finance day-to-day operations. All scenarios are not a good option. Now, in my mind, debt for those needs is not good debt. There are times when we may get a band and turn it into a bond to do a long-term capital project. As we did with paving, when we saw asphalt prices going up, we decided interest rates were terribly low. Let's do that work in advance and save the cost of doing it in the coming year. So that, economists, I think, would also argue about good debt and bad debt. But I think day-to-day operations, you shouldn't borrow. In our homes, if you get a broken window from the kids playing ball, you shouldn't have to whip out the credit card to pay for the window. You should have enough money in your checkbook. You can go get a window and put it in and not have a debt situation on that. And that's what I mean by general and highway being way too low. The noted cash totals over $6 million, which is similar to the funds a family may have in their checkbook and wallets at the end of the month. I mentioned that, I think, last time. Those funds may be in anticipation, though, of a mortgage payment, groceries, or other payments in household or medical needs. It's not the same as funds that would be in long-term savings and money set aside for retirement or an unanticipated major expense. It would be tempting to interpret what is in reality over $3.7 million in water and sewer as money available to pay down debt or invest in needed infrastructure upgrades. We discussed that at some length today, and we could allocate those funds that way. But then you need a lift station. It could get down to the year-to-year kinds of needs we have in operation and maintenance. The money's not there, so now you have to get into a debt situation, which I don't think would be healthy. It would be tempting, and it is tempting, to interpret that money as available, but it truly, I don't think, should be. There may be a short-term benefit to do that, but because this is cash flow, not cash surplus, it would simply make for reckless budgeting and risky long-term planning. What I think we need to do, and again, I'm going to lean on Pat to do this for us, once he gets more time to study this cash flow and how these accounts have fared over the years, and we've looked at that a bit in water sewer, we need to determine, are we leaving an amount that is in excess of what should be there, and we maybe should free it for a cash surplus or use it in other ways. Things like the lighting district, I would expect the amount of cash we need in cash flow is much smaller, because what are the outstanding liabilities? You get a nice storm, you've got to throw some more poles up and replace, you have an insurance claim, you do the work. It's a different number than when you compare it to the, I don't know what it is, the hundreds of millions of dollars. I know, Marty, you talked about that recently, that we have in water sewer. It's a totally different situation. So the cash flow has got to match the potential liabilities, and that's something we're going to keep working on to make sure we're doing that correctly. The good news is that we have been able to pay our bills, and other than general and highway, we have some cash flow to manage our annual needs, barring any catastrophic failure. It would be very difficult to find a successful business that was spending all of its cash to manage daily needs with no cash flow or reserves and investments for future unanticipated needs. A lack of both cash flow and surplus has caused financial failure for more than one family and many businesses in Wall Street. We don't want to be deficit spending. And we don't want to be hoarding money. I don't mean to imply that either. As you may recall, one of the tasks of our new finance manager is to improve the management of our cash flow, develop investment strategies, monitor purchases, and audit our internal accounts. He will guide us to create a strategy to initiate cash surplus accounts while developing a fiscal plan to invest in our aging infrastructure. This will not be accomplished immediately and will take a period of time to develop a financial program for solvency and sustainability. Many work sessions, I think we've talked about sustainability. How we got a plan that'll keep things going. Jim often has that conversation with me when we look at the potential liability, especially water sewer. Are we able to manage it? Hurricane Irene brought a lot of that concern to many municipalities when they weren't able to repair the catastrophic losses without debt and certainly without help from FEMA. So part of why I wanted to share this, and we haven't had, and it's ongoing, it's evolving. I think we all agree why we've made some changes in budgeting and the budget office, but this will be our focus as we continue to plan and create a plan for future financial sustainability. So I think you'll find the chart somewhat interesting. And just for the record, I guess, when I really rubbed my nose in these accounts and saw at the end of 2011 we had $458 in the highway department, that's a little bit low. Now, it's not that way every year. It's going to depend on what the expenses were, what unforeseen issues came up. But that's the other piece that we need to really break down and look at now. What did highway look like for the past 5 years, 10 years? Is there a trend? Is this the trend? If it is, it's too low. Or is this an anomaly? And I'll keep getting those, that information to you so you've got it as well. But I wanted to be sure and share that. And the other thing I found interesting today, and I know if I don't get it to you, it'll probably never happen. I believe it's generic. Herb Carpenter, who publishes the Strictly Business magazine. In fact, I will be participating in this year's forum. I think it's Wednesday morning. Herb has been, I've been involved in the forums for a few years. He's been very concerned about what's going on in the local economy as well. And as you'll see when you read through this, he's reacted to some of the newer news. But in Herb's chart, he graphed out, did a little research, and he found national retail sales over a 5-year period. And retail sales haven't been good. There are a lot of issues with that, of course. But in 2008, you can see where these were and what happened in 2009. 2010 simply gets back to about where 2008 was. But look at the trend. And, I don't think Herb Carpenter is saying, oh boy, we're out of the woods, happy days again. Neither is Bertie Bassett. But it's important that we also identify, where it's going as much as where we are and where we've been. And we'll start doing some very similar things. And I think we'll find very similar patterns. This has been an economic crisis. But it's important for us as we plan and budget to know where it's going, to know if rates are going to be changing, and so on. So we're going to take a tight look, and again, I want you to be pretty conscious of things we've never done before that we're going to be able to do because we have more expertise working for us and able to do economic analysis in ways that wasn't available unless we paid external consultants. So anyway, there it is. Digest it, think about it. We can talk about that more in work session if you'd like, and I'll try to keep things coming.